Hi. Although we've been studying sound and sound waves, I want to review a couple of things with you to make sure that you understand. First of all, let's review matter. We know that matter is anything that has mass and volume. The reason there is no sound in space is because there's no matter in space. Now, I'm not talking about planets. I'm talking about just the space. There's no matter there for sound waves to travel through, thus no sound in space. Let's also remember when we learned about the phases of matter, and we learned that in a solid, the particles were so tightly packed they could only vibrate. We learned that in a liquid, the particles were a little further apart, they could slip and slide around each other, which is what allows us to be able to pour a liquid. And we learned that in a gas, the particles were really spread out far. They're like the ever-ready battery. They just keep going and going until they hit something and bounce off. It's important to remember how those particles are in a solid, liquid, and gas. Now, sound waves must travel through matter. Sound waves travel fastest when the particles are closer together. Sound waves travel the slowest when the particles are far apart. So, what do you think sound waves travel fastest in? A solid, a liquid, or a gas? Think about that and come up with an answer. I'd like to go over with you the pathway that sound waves take once they enter our ear, just to make sure you understand. Now, you can look at the diagram that you have. That might be easier than looking at my diagram. Either way will work. The sound waves enter our ear and they go through our ear canal and hit the eardrum, causing the eardrum to vibrate. Now, these sound waves that have entered our ear, when they hit the eardrum, they're at the very same frequency they were at when they entered our ear. Once they hit the eardrum vibrates and those sound waves travel to the hammer, again at the same frequency as when they entered our ear. The hammer then starts tapping and sending those sound waves to the anvil, again at the same frequency. From the anvil, we know those sound waves go to the stirrup at the same frequency, and from the stirrup they go to the cochlea, which sends the signal to the brain, letting the brain know, hey, there's a sound. The important thing to know about this, besides how it's going through, what the pathway is that the sound waves are always at the same frequency as when they enter the ear. Now, I also want to remind you about what the ossicles are. That's just a collective term for hammer, anvil, and stirrup. Shorter way of saying hammer, anvil, and stirrup, we can just say the ossicles. They're the three smallest bones in the body. Now, what was your answer up here for how sound waves travel the fastest? Sound waves travel the fastest in a solid, and they travel the slowest in a gas. Did you get it right? Let's think about frequency for just a minute. Frequency, we learned, is how many complete wave cycles pass a spot in 1 second. We also learned that with sound, frequency refers to pitch. How high or how low. High, low, that's the pitch. The higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. Now, with our tuning forks, the sound waves traveled through the air, and it sounded one way. Now, when the sound waves traveled from the tuning fork through the string to our ear, they sounded different. How come? Think about that. Why did that happen? We'll get to the answer in a minute. Amplitude, as you know, when it refers to sound, amplitude is talking about loudness. So the higher the amplitude, the louder the sound is. Now, let's see what your answer was. Why was the sound different coming from the tuning fork through the air to our ear than from the tuning fork through the string to our ear? It's because the sound travels faster through a solid than through air. When it came through the string, it was traveling through a solid.